Welcome back, Alejandro. Today we're excited to review Google, or the parent company is called Alphabet, and they had that name change some while ago, and most of us still know it as Google. So I'm excited to talk about Google with you because I used to own some Google stock. I don't at the moment, but I'm always eager to learn more about Google, and I'm sure the audience will also greatly appreciate what you're presenting with us today. So thank you for joining us, Alejandro.
Hello, Michelle. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure again. And it's funny that you said that you used to own it because I used to own it too, and now I don't. But now maybe after this presentation, we can maybe pull the trigger again if we think it's a good value. So as you said, Google, probably one of the greatest companies in history. It has so many things, so many channels of getting money on, and we're going to talk about them. And I think one of the great things about Google also is that like people think they do everything and they do, but I don't know if most people understand the numbers, and with this presentation, they gonna have it clearer than before. So about Google, Alpha, as you say, is the parent company. It has a collection of businesses, which the biggest of them is Google. And Google has three important segments, which is Google Services, Google Cloud, and other bets. So Google Services, the core products are the platforms, their ads, the Android, Chrome, hardware, Gmail, Google Drive, Maps, Photos. And the good thing about this is obviously you become part of a little world when you join one of them. Google has a company building the cloud, and we continue to invest in the cloud. This comes from their annual report. Offerings including Google Platform, Google Workspace, Google Technology, and cybersecurity. So again, I mean, they get hired by different companies and they give everything to the company, AI solutions and everything. This is a very exciting moment for this because it's just growing and they keep integrating, and this is very interesting, and it's a big change in this segment in the world right now. Other bets across Alphabet, we're also using technology to try to solve big problems that affect a wide variety of industries, from improving transportation and health technology to exploring solutions to address climate change. So again, as we said at the beginning, Google is part basically of everything. A lot of the big companies in the world, like a lot of the big things that are growing, as they said, they're part of in health. Apple, for example, is also trying to get big into health. So I mean, these big companies, they are just trying to get into everything, but obviously they have their segments where they get the money from, which is the interesting part. So how they make the money? So performance advertising creates and delivers relevant ads that uses with a click on, leading to direct engagement with advertisers. This reminds me of when Buffett said that he just missed it because he knew how it worked so well at Geico and how every click they got charged like $20, but the incremental cost for Google was nothing. So he talks in different interviews and he gets asked about Google and he just can't believe he missed it. Brand advertising helps enhance user awareness of an affinity for advertiser products and services through videos, text, images, and other interactive apps that run across various devices. And I just said, I mean, this is, for example, going from computer to phones right now. I mean, this segment is growing a lot. So obviously they are trying to optimize. They keep changing, trying to see where they can get the most dollars, but obviously not only for them, but also for their customers. Cloud-based solutions that provide enterprises customers of all sizes with infrastructure and platform services, as well as communication and collaboration tools. Google Play generates revenues from sale of apps and app purchases. The hardware part, which this is honestly pretty small, but I mean, it's part of their business. And again, they just have bets, and sometimes, I mean, they can just start getting more customers from one of these big bets. I mean, this is one of the good things that these big companies do when they have so much money. I mean, for example, Amazon, AWS was one of their bets, and look what it is now. And then Google start going very big into this, and Microsoft. YouTube, I think, is part of, I mean, this is on YouTube, so it's part of everyday people's lives. I mean, I get into YouTube every day. I get into Google every day. How about you,
Yeah.
Michelle?
Oh yeah, same. And also like a lot of family members, they show me things on YouTube, or like so much of our lives are kind of somehow on this too, not just here on this YouTube channel, but say if you want to sometimes listen to a music video or watch an old movie, some of my family members, kind of share things from YouTube a lot. So and I still use Google search. I know a lot of people might use some of the ChatGPT. They might have replaced some of their searches they did in Google, but to me, it's still the default that I always use.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, I use YouTube for everything from maybe trying to see how I install a filter in my fridge to how to get my new baby how to stop crying. It's funny. I mean, it's part of everything. So here, the cloud is a big part of what Google is all about right now. I mean, they're growing, but as we can see here, they're still far behind from Azure and AWS. Compared to 1 year, AWS had 34%, so they lost 2 points on market share. Azure had 20, so they gained that 2 points, and Google had the 11. So basically, the three guys are maintaining about the same market share, even though Microsoft won a little and AWS lost a little bit. Do you use any of this, Michelle?
Well, I mean, I've come across some of these before, like sometimes in work, or like, some people might use Google Photos, and that, they can share their pictures with you sometimes. So usually I've used like the top, or been exposed to the top three, and had used Salesforce before, but some of the other ones, like I know Alibaba and Tencent, those are like over in China. And so they have their own kind of things going on. But I've heard like, this is like kind of the way that the cloud market share has been as of the last few years. Like it's been mainly AWS, and I know Azure, because it's Microsoft, has been pretty popular and also has competitive pricing. So it kind of makes sense. Like Google is like okay, but if you've ever used Google Drive, it can be a little bit clunky sometimes. So it's like it to me, it kind of is understandable that AWS and Azure are still the top two preferred cloud providers.
Okay. Yeah, I do use Google Cloud. That's mine. So here's the profitability again. I always say, and I think this is one of the most important things to understand in every company, because again, we in the day-to-day talk we talk about different companies. Oh wow, I spelled wrong profitability. I'm sorry. But sometimes we just say, oh yeah, Google is making self-driving cars, or they're making this and that, but a lot of the time we just don't understand the numbers, and looking through the numbers is really where you can see what a company is all about. Because as we see here, I mean, the self-driving car, it comes from other bets, and that is, I mean, it's not even 0.5% of Google's revenue. That doesn't mean it cannot be a big segment. It obviously, I mean, if they are spending money, and even as we can see in other bets, they've been losing, I don't know, it's almost 12 billion in the last 3 years. That doesn't mean it's going to always be like that. If they are making it, because those bets are very asymmetric. Sometimes they just hit at something, and that just grows and grows, and that's what they're trying to do. But as we see, I mean, Google services is what gives the employees what to eat and everything. Cloud, was from the annual report of 2022, so it was still losing money in the last quarter. They are making money on the cloud, so I mean, it kept growing, and now it is profitable. So again, as I showed before, I mean, it's a very important segment. It has headwinds, with them. So it is very important.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't make it seem like, Google Cloud is bad, but it's like, I'm impressed that they're growing so well, being that AWS and Azure had kind of like a bigger head start, sort of. So, maybe cloud, it's coming, and I think it's impressive that I think I saw before one of the stat was like it only had 8% market share, and growing to 11% is pretty good. So yeah, like it's impressive that it's also generating a good amount of revenues, and like you said, it's now profitable.
Yeah, I totally agree. And part of it, I think, if you think about it, I mean, it's really integrated into all of the other segments like Gmail. And I mean, it just integrates. And so it's easier for anybody to just go with one instead of going to, I don't know, Gmail and using the cloud of AWS. And it's just a part of how they are very connected with all their segments, which it just makes it people to be ingrained in their system, definitely. So the revenues by geography, obviously, as always, United States is the most important one. The other ones, and it's been stable during the last few years. The balance sheet and the highlights, which I think are one of the most interesting things. And right here we see that the stock-based compensation to me is quite high. I mean, if you think about that, they made like 74 million in 74 billion, I'm sorry, in 2022, and 20 billion is going to stock-based compensation. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But I mean, they are also investing their money in purchasing their stock. I mean, in the last 3 years, it's almost 150. I mean, a little less than 150 billion. So I think they're spending like their main cash in investing in a great business, which is search. So definitely a good way to spend your money. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well.
Well, and maybe maybe it makes sense that in order to be competitive and keep a lot of the talent at Google, that they need to offer this high amount of stock-based compensation. And I think there are other companies we've talked about that also had somewhat higher stock-based compensation offered to some of the employees. So I think that I think it would warrant for further exploration of, is it competitive with Microsoft or Amazon? Like, is it similar or different, and why might it be different compared to, say, others, or even like Facebook or Meta, as it is called? So it'd be interesting to compare, like, among the big tech, is this just kind of the way they have been doing business so that they continue to have the top talent? And I'm guessing also be interesting to see if they're doing stock buybacks when they consider the stock to be cheap, because like Buffett has said, it's smart when your stock is on sale, but if it's not really, makes me wonder if they're making those repurchases at the right time. So that'll be also something people should study.
Oh yeah, those points that you bring are totally, I mean, are excellent. And one of the things that you said at the beginning, just, I mean, they're spending so much because they do want to keep the best talent. And I'm not that big into this, and I'm not an engineer or anything, and don't know that much about it. But what I heard from people that know is that, like, for example, if you have a average waiter and you have the best waiter in the whole city, your efficiency of serving tables is not going to be like more than 1.5, like from the average waiter that from the one that is the best waiter in all town. But when you have the best engineer compared to like an average engineer, you can like make the products 100 or 1,000 times better. So your point, I mean, makes me think of this, and I think you're totally right. There is people really, really smart investing in Google, and comes to mind Bill Ackman. He bought a shares, I think 6 months ago. And obviously to me, behind Buffett, my favorite investor is probably Li Lu, which almost a year ago, he had Google and Facebook, and he had a bigger position in Facebook, but then he decided to sell Facebook, and his biggest position now is Google, which I mean, and as you know, I mean, Charlie Munger has said he's one of the smartest people he's ever met. I mean, I think he got, I mean, he was making money with his loans in Colombia. So I mean, it's just amazing how smart this, how this guy is. And
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like Lilu being invested in Google is pretty impressive. So definitely following what some of the super investors are and trying to figure out what might be the investment case as to why they might have invested is helpful to figure out.
yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's a great starting point to start looking at companies, especially when you are able to like see that stock at a similar price, at least, that what they bought
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, it probably would have been great value to buy Google stock when it was at $85 or so. And then I know it's gone up since, but yeah, I missed out on that time window when it was down that low. So like kind of yeah, if the lesson I think is like, study some of the best investors at this, and if it's a meaningful stock to you that you keep on a wish list, you have your eye set on it, and ideally you've done your homework ahead of time and figured out what valuation is appropriate and makes sense, and like kind of what buy price you might have in mind if it comes to that. So that it's possible that when Google was at its 2022 low, that might have been a good entry point for some people. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought I agree. I think we had a mistake of omission.
Yep.
So the mode, Google has a massive network effect. It has around 85% of the search market. It has close to 50% of the digital advertising market, which is growing and growing. Search and YouTube are two of the most profitable businesses in the world and hardest to compete with. Search has fixed costs, so more business expands, the margins expand. It is ingrained in the mind of consumers as a habit for millions to visit Google every day. At the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned ChatGPT, but I think Google rolled out Bard, which for this presentation, I look at several videos, and most of them like Bard more. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not an expert in that, and I guess the opinions are different. But what it comes to me is one of the next point. It has Google has one of the largest distribution systems to roll out AI, and they already were successful integrating into search. So Microsoft came out with ChatGPT, and everybody, I mean, there was the buzz. Oh yeah, Google is going to lose market share. But at the end of the day, with Google coming out with Bard, I think they are putting a self-neutralizing movement, which I mean, I go to Google every day, so I'm not going to start going to Bing because of ChatGPT. I mean, it's just a habit which is very, very difficult to change. So that was one of the reasons that stock went down so much, and now it's just obviously back. And I don't really think this ChatGPT is going to take much share from search, especially because, as he says, I mean, Google has the best distribution system for this. So I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know what do you think, but I just think the habit of getting out of Google is not going to change much.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of very interesting applications with AI and trying to figure out things like, some of these AI systems have more pros and cons, and I know more people call it machine learning because it's not, quite having, more of a sentient knowledge yet. It's not like in some of the movies like Her or like other movies that, it's like AI is coming to life. Like a lot of this is still machine learning models. So like for some things it's helpful, like maybe if you want to say, oh, I have these ingredients, like what kind of recipe can we use to make dinner, so it might be useful in things like that to give suggestions. But other times, like if you wanted to calculate certain things, sometimes it's still not fully calculating things entirely right, or if you wanted to analyze certain things, you have to definitely double check its work before you just believe it. Or sometimes it makes up stuff, like some people having certain education that they never got, like certain famous people. So it definitely can have very interesting uses, but you have to also be aware of some of the current drawbacks that I'm sure they're trying to work on, and feed it more knowledge so that it can improve its modeling. So I'm sure there will be really interesting applications for Bard and ChatGPT in the coming year. So I think, there's probably showing a lot of promise. And if it can be useful, like you're saying, embedded within how we currently use Google, if it just keeps getting smarter, that will probably keep their advertising generation, more competitive. So I think that will be also very important. And it would be interesting to see if Amazon has a response to some of this, if they're trying to come up with any AI models as well, because Amazon is also a big search engine play. So it'd be interesting to see if they're going to try to compete with Google at all on some of this.
Yeah, that is a great point. I agree. But at the end of the day, from a business perspective, I just think Bard is going to neutralize whatever ChatGPT can do, because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I just don't think there's going to be much difference. And why are we 85? Why 85% of the market is Google? I'm not 100% sure why 85% of the market just decided to choose Google over the other search engines, but it is like that. And as Buffett always says, he doesn't understand why when he goes with Seas Candy to Florida, that doesn't work. It just is the way it is.
Yep. Yeah, they're definitely entrenched. So Google is most likely to maintain this competitive advantage for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, just to finish, a couple of things that Buffett has said about Google. He regrets on not buying Google. He has seen how good the advertising worked at Geico, and he did not buy. He said he should have had more insight into it, since he has no incremental cost per click and he was looking at it. He has several aspects of a monopoly. He said we missed it. I mean, and he said this through the years too, also Charlie. And he always praises Larry and Serge just how smart they were. I mean, they visit him, I think, I don't know if trying to raise money, but he always says how he talked to them, and he has a deep admiration for them. So again, he had the same mistake of omission that we had.
But it's funny because I think Berkshire owns some Amazon, right? And like you would think, if they're willing to own Amazon, was there no recent price that Google or Alphabet came down to that would be compelling to them? Unlike, you know, Li Lu was willing to buy into it fairly recently. So it makes you wonder how come it's still not something that Berkshire is willing to dive into.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but they do. Yeah, Berkshire has some Amazon, but I think that position came from, I don't know, Todd or Ted,
Hmm.
and I think it's very little. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, again, and I agree with you. I mean, I just think Google it has more of the characteristics that they look for, because I mean, it's like way lower capital than Amazon. I mean, Amazon is very um, capital. What's the opposite? Capital.
Yeah, capital intensive.
Yeah, capital intensive. I'm sorry, I forgot the word for. Is that not sleeping? That is just
Yeah, no
making me
problem.
forget words. So yeah, definitely. I think this is a company that you have to keep looking into it. Even though it's in a market that is constantly changing, I think it has such a great distribution, such a great position in people's minds, that even though it's changing, it's just ingrained in our daily lives.
Yeah, and I mean, like some of that is, makes me wonder, is there any possibility that Google can lose advertising market share? Because that's the crown jewel. Like if say, in business, there's always competitors who are trying to attack your moat, right? So, is some of the fear maybe not justified, like maybe related to AI stuff, maybe it's not justified, but maybe, there are other dark horses that we're not really thinking about, like Facebook, maybe Facebook's advertising models that they're doing with Instagram or elsewhere. maybe that is some kind of threat to Google's platform somehow. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm just guessing, but it definitely begs the question. We should always invert the investing case, like Charlie Munger says. So as great as Google is, we should also think about what could happen to make the good times not as good anymore. So like hopefully Google will still stay strong for a long time, but kind of also makes you wonder sometimes about the news with antitrust things going on. Is any of that a possibility that some of these big tech could be broken up? Who knows? Like you have to weigh and decide if that's a big deal or not when looking at some of these companies and make your own informed decisions about, kind of what the next 10 years might look like for a Google.
Yeah, I think you brought out some great points. In my humble opinion, the only thing that can stop Google is probably regulation, because I just think with their distribution system, they are probably going to be winners with AI, and this is going to be very big. That's what I think, but obviously, as you said, people has to do their own homework, and hopefully all that we said here just helps you get it more knowledgeable about companies and definitely make smarter investments.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Alejandro, for reviewing Google with us and doing some analysis here to help highlight what are some of the financial attributes of Google, and definitely really worthwhile. I mean, if it's a great company, it can be a great asset allocation strategy to do buyback. So I hope that's working out in their favor and for all the shareholders in Google, and for all of us who are just keeping using it in our everyday lives, it's still pretty great. Like a lot of ages are benefiting from a lot of the services they provide. So thanks again, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.